And we're good. Hi everyone, double checking that video and audio is good. Even let me know in the chat. But yeah, welcome to an impromptu top 10. I kind of realised I haven't done a live stream for a while, or at least not a proper live stream outside of like doing the podcast. And I figured, well, you know what, I want to get some more content out because for ages I had COVID and conventions and family stuff and a social life and all. Blimey, my time was getting used up. So I figured, well, you know, I got some content out this week. I did the Quacks of Quedlinburg review, but then I also did an Autobahn preview for Alley Cat Games, which they don't want to release until Tuesday. So I thought, well, I need to get something out. And so I figured a top 10 list solo would be an interesting way to do it. So, you know, basically just to, you know what, I need to see if these top 10s work on a solo perspective. Yes, of course, I want to do collaborations with people because, you know, solo playthroughs and, you know, One Pit Wonder and Ninja Geek Games, they all want to come on the show. So I'll definitely try and get them on at some point during late April, May time. But yeah, they... You know, I figured, what would it be like if I just did some solo ones now and again? You know, it gets content out, gets through more top 10 lists because it will just be a bit easier to do. And hopefully I can keep the running time to about an hour, 75 minutes tops. I mean, that is the theory, but we know what we're like. But thanks to everybody who is in the chat at the moment. So what's the deal with this list? Well, I did top 10 essential expansions last year, and about this time actually. And, well, I love expansions to games. I am getting far more picky over Kickstarter now and extremely picky over just new games in general. I hear about a new game and I go, well, I'll believe it when I see it. You know, I don't succumb to hype. But expansions get me excited and more hyped up because I already know I like the game. So to get more content for an expansion, I'm certainly more interested in that fact. But I already did essential expansions last year, which are the kind of ones where I'm like, no, seriously, you need to get this for this game, and 95% of the time, I'm not going to play the game without this expansion included. This is where I really want the expansion to be in there, but it doesn't have to be in there for me to enjoy the game because either another expansion is there or, you know, perhaps it's just like it doesn't include as much. Now, I really did have to make a few caveats with this one though, and I may have gone mad on, you know, I may have even broken one or two at some point, but I figured, well, okay, the expansion needs to be, for the most part, stuff I like. It also needs to ideally not be standalone, although there is one on my list that does break that rule. It ideally also needs to be not just more of the same. So it's not just a case of, oh, it gives you the exact same stuff you had in the base set, just more of it, because yeah, that's good expansions, but then there's only so much I can really say about that. I want them to at least add something new. And what was the other bit? Trying to think. Oh, yes, and it can't be an expansion that simply fixes a component issue. So Underwater Cities does not get on this list because you do not get a free pass from me for a great expansion just because you fixed your player boards that sucked in the original one. You know, that's kind of the way I'm going. But thanks to everybody who's tuning in, everybody from Matt to Egg, to the lovely Ashley, who's always around, to Paul, Lurking Lillian, Carlos, and yep, I agree, you got to be picky when your games cost an absolute fortune these days. And of course, the lovely Kabuki Kid, who sadly can only be around for about quarter of an hour, but as I say, hopefully you'll get to watch it a bit later. And Zaya was on the last list actually for essential expansions, so that was essentially, you know, one I did last year, so you're not going to see it again. But yeah, I get that some of you won't be able to watch the entire stream. That's fine. A, it was impromptu, and B, honestly, if you watch it after the fact, I'm happy either way, because I either get to interact with some of you on the chat now, or you get to watch it afterwards and still enjoy the video. Either way, I'm happy. So yeah, those caveats out of the way, these are 10 expansions where I'm like, yeah, I really want these to be in the game. Doesn't have to be in the game for me to enjoy it, but ideally, could you please put them in the game because it would be nice if you did. So without further ado, let's get on with it. Okie doke. So, right, with this one, this is the one that does break my rule, okay? It does break the rule that I mentioned earlier where it said it can't be standalone. I said ideally it can't be standalone, but I figured with this one, I put it at number 10 for this reason. And I figured, well, it is an expansion I really do enjoy, so I gotta talk about it at least, but at least I didn't put it higher than 10. This is for a deck builder, one of my favorite deck builders. It normally just comes in a tiny little box, little tuck box, and it's a space sci-fi, really good. I actually played this with this expansion in the convention I was at early April with a couple of friends of mine. We played 3-player games, and it reminded me so much about how much I love this game and this expansion in general, which is Frontiers for Star Realms. Let's take off that top 10 overlay. There we go. Get rid of that. So with this one and Star Realms Frontiers. So actually I'm going to experiment a little bit with... my face is too big there. Let's go for big picture. But with this one, with Frontiers, yes, it's standalone. I get it. You could buy Frontiers on its own and play it as if you didn't have the previous two, Colony Wars and normal Star Realms, which is fine. But with this one, it introduced a couple of elements that I love in this game. These big cards that you see in the middle here, the solo and co-op mode. I enjoy playing this as a 2-player game, but I don't get 2-player games at the table often, so being able to play it in multiplayer with different modes is already good fun. But I really like playing this game solo with the extra, solo or even co-op, really. We played co-op games at the convention, so I don't think yes, we did fight the Dimensional Horror and the Madness of the Machine. And basically the way that these work is you have kind of like a boss that you go up against that has its own rules for how it operates, so there is a little bit of rules learning to go by. Some of them are keying off particular cards, some of them go nuts, like Madness and Dimensional Horror. You've got columns of cards that represent tentacles of the Dimensional Horror, and you've got to chip away at the tentacles, but it whacks you back depending on its longest tentacle, and depending on what cards it eats from the trade row, it keys off one of its 4 effects. Madness and the Machine starts off basically with a ton of red cards in the deck, so you don't get to use the red faction. It starts off slow, but then slowly spirals into an uncontrollable machine, and you've got to get it down before it gets to that stage. These are such good fun, and this expansion came with 8 of them, and I think other expansions may have included them as well from time to time, I feel certain, or maybe it's just the fact that I think it was just these ones. But honestly, you can get a decent amount of replay value from this, and say, play it solo is great fun, but 2-player co-op, we played 3-player co-op, it's just really cool to play it this way. Not to say I don't like playing this in the normal fashion with the just traditional 2v 2v2 1v1 head on, because you get some cool cards in here and that's always a good thing. But certainly with this, I think it's just having those modes and just means I get the game out more often, because I went for the Kickstarter for this with this giant box and I needed to justify the purchase a little bit. Being able to bring it out for solo is a great way to do it, but then also, honestly, the just being able to play it co-op with other people means that I could teach this game nice and easily as a co-op fashion, and we can have a good amount of fun. So yeah, Star Realms Frontiers is a solid one for the books. Noticing a few interesting ones there. We've got the Lords of Waterdeep expansion is essential. It certainly is for a lot of people. The Viticulture Tuscany was on my essentials list, so you won't see that on this one. I haven't played Oceania enough in Wingspan to comment, so spoiler alert, that's not on this list, and I don't know if I wouldn't really call it essential, honestly, but I've barely tapped into it, so I really do need to play it more. I've actually got to do a video for the Kittens and Beast expansion and the boat pack for Isle of Cats soon, because Asmodee sent me copies. They're nice, but for the money, they're not the best value, especially when, honestly, 1 out of the 3 modules I don't want to use in the Kittens and Beast one. I don't like the events. The events are just too much like tokens and faff for what is effectively just events. I do the other 2 modules, but not that one. That's kind of a spoiler of what's coming in that video. I guess you don't need to watch it. Oh well, waste of time doing it. But yeah, that's Frontiers. I like it. Solo and co-op modes are always nice. Moving on to 9s. Ooh, this is going back a little bit. So with this one, we're actually sticking with a space theme. So it is certainly a space game. It's been a while since I've got this one out, but when I thought about it, it's like, yeah, if I get this one out again, I want to play with this particular expansion in it. Now, it does take the game to a complexity level where you certainly don't want to teach this off the bat unless you're playing with heavy gamers. It's going to be a little bit too much for people to handle. But you do end up with something that's really cool, which is the fact that in this original dice game where you put dice on the board and do different actions, which, let's face it, we've seen a bucket load of times, this one gave you the chance to have your own unique station, which is always a good thing, always something that's welcomed. And for that, it's Factions for Alien Frontiers. So Alien Frontiers is kind of like one of the first games that you had where you rolled dice and you used them in different combinations, maths-wise. You did math to figure out which action you wanted to do. With that one, you placed them on there and you were trying to area control this moon area. But you've got these actions here, like you see, look, 2 dice plus equal to or greater than 8, you get a card. Those sort of things. This was one of the first games that did it, and I still think it's one of the best ones to do it. I love this one. I mean, look how gorgeous that is for a game that came out a ton of years ago. What Factions does, though, is that in the normal game, you just have a basic board like this. This is effectively your board. Factions gives you this I'm going to have to take the banner off a second just to showcase it. There we go. So here you go. Scavenger Fleet and the Gala Engineers. There's a couple of examples. It gives you your own personal board with an ability that you can use as another action. Other people can come around and use it as well, but they got to give you credits to do so. But if you imagine that there's 3 or 4 of you at the table, each with these different faction boards, it opens up new strategies and really does take Alien Frontiers to a good level. The only problem is that it takes it to a complexity level which is a bit above some new players, and of course Alien Frontiers is one of those games you ideally don't want to play with 4 players anyway because the downtime is kind of ridiculous. But otherwise, it's a solid expansion all round, and going around there. Come on, there we go. And yeah, it's a good one. Not too expensive to get, but it basically improves a game that already existed. Curious thing is, I don't see this one played anymore. It's just like, it's kind of disappeared off the radar for pretty much like everybody. And, it's a shame really, because everyone sort of goes on about like Marco Polo and a few of the other ones, and it's like, yeah, but what's wrong with this one? It's like, this one is a solid expansion, and I kind of feel like it needs to be like talked about more. But well, even solid expansion, a solid game, frankly. But well, that's just the way it is. But I'm curious what you lot think. Do you play this one anymore? Is this kind of like gone and died for you in a sense, or is this actually one that you are interested in? I'd be interested to know. But yeah, Alien Frontiers. It's just, most people haven't even heard of it or can't see a copy of it anymore. But honestly, I'd say you still give it a look. Anyway, I'm waffling. Let's quickly move on to 8. Lovely. So, decaf tea or something. Sponsored by Dice. Using one of their mugs for the local cafe. Righty, what have we got here? We've got, oh god, yeah, big expansion. We're going to Euro games now, and can you even see it on the board? Don't think so. No, I think I'm getting away just. Or actually, no, you can actually see it on the camera. But basically, there was once a farming game which everybody lorded over, and I thought it was punishing and crushing as all get out. But, I still give the game respect, which was Agricola. Then came Caverna, which kicked its rear end out of the complex for as far as I'm concerned. It kicked it straight out of the fields, and I was much more interested in Caverna. Well, it was starting to get to a point where, like, okay, I've seen these buildings before. I kind of need to, I need to get something else into this game, a little bit more differentiation. Thankfully, Forgotten Folk came by. Forgotten Folk is an expansion for Caverna, which me and some friends who love Caverna, we love this one to bits. We play this one a lot, when we can. We will always try to throw this expansion in whenever we can, and it's an interesting one, and it certainly does. There's a lot of debate as to whether this one is better to teach right off the bat or not, and I can see the argument both ways. I feel that it ups the complexity level a bit too much, say, to teach it on your first game, but there is this sound argument where people think, well, because these races that you play can give you a kind of gear you to a particular style, it helps new players to figure out what they need to do. It kind of works both ways, and I kind of like the argument with it. But I'm in two minds. But, oh god, that horrible carpet, do not use that. But basically, it gives you a bunch of different player powers. Lots of different races that have their own special rules. Annoyingly, this one uses the iconography side, so you can't necessarily see what they do. But, you've got these elves that like to be outside, and you've got, like, the adventurers. Halflings was a cool promo, which were basically really good farmers. You've got these rock golem things that can only eat stone. They're a weird one to play. These guys, you have to eat stone. And trust me, you think that's going to be easy? Oh, great, I don't have to ever worry about food? Yeah, try and getting hold of a lot of stone when everybody else also wants stone for things. It's harder than it looks. But it's just a great expansion to have those different races in there, because now, cave goblins can have extra people, and some of them like to build inside, some like to build outside. It just creates new strategies, new styles of play, new paths to victory. I do wish there was more pictures than just the cover of the game, but oh well, that's just the way it is. But yeah, it's just, let's see if I can get, pale ones there. So what have we got? Come on. Let's see if I can get... never mind. But yeah, so they can use drift mining and excavation even if they're occupied. They can overhang mountain tiles, so you can make, you can really expand your tunnels. But then they don't like fields or meadows. They don't suffer negative VP for forest spaces, So they like to really be the albino lot that sits inside and doesn't do anything. So yeah, it doesn't get played all the time, but it is sitting there, and I do wish I could store it in the original box. Sadly, I can't, because you end up with all of these. But it's a solid one all round. I enjoy it, and definitely I think deserves a bit more buzz. Although we are getting another expansion later this year, which was delayed from last year for, I don't know, Fiends of Caverna or Forgotten Fiends. I forget what it's called. But that should be interesting. You're supposedly defending yourself from orc raiders and that. I look forward to it, but I'm curious how that's really going to change up, the game in general. Fair enough. Dune Imperium expansion may be a good choice for the list, but we know that Luke won't have it on his personal list. That would be correct, yes. To be fair, I've not actually played the game with the expansion. A friend of mine has it and keeps playing it every Portsmouth night he can, but I've never been in his Dune game to find out. Although, to be honest, I don't think it's going to elevate the game that much for me, maybe another point. I thought it was great when I started, then I saw chinks in the armor, now it's above average. Maybe this will round it off to being good, 7 out of 10 period, but definitely a little overrated. But I haven't tried it, so we'll have to see. Wait until there's an expansion for Hadrian's Wall. That game does not need an expansion. There's enough in that game as it is. Or get everything there. Oh, one. There we go. Take a little breather there. But yeah, I certainly do enjoy Caverna. It's, like I say, player powers are always fun, and in something where I'm already invested in the theme of farming and really getting into the theme of the game, being able to say that I'm the halflings or the elves just makes it a little bit better. But yeah, I look forward to more content for this one. We don't use it all the time. I just wish I could use it a lot more often than I currently do. Number 7. This one is not going to appear on anybody else's list, I can guarantee you that. Mainly because I seem to find myself having to tell people about this game because they've either not heard of it, or they've not tried it, or they seriously, need to hurry up and get on it. And Artipia Games are doing their best to let people get in on this. They've done a massive Kickstarter where you can get all the content, but for some reason I still find that every time I bring this game out, it's like, huh? Game of Life Euro Edition? What on earth is this? What are you talking about, Luke? I'm talking about the Pursuit of Happiness. Specifically, Community. Community, I do like to include in as many games of this as possible. Not always on the first teach, particularly when there's a lot of players. The expansion that came after this, I will only use in small player counts, solo, and when everybody knows what they're doing. There's too much at that point going on, and it's a meh expansion. It's not that. I thought, what was it called? Experiences, I think it was. And it's okay, but it's certainly not one I like to throw in too often. Community, on the other hand, is actually one I do like to play with as often as I can, for two reasons. Firstly, It's not the most complex thing in the round to sort of pilot, but mainly because the theme it adds is so solid. You end up with a sideboard of which is effectively, think of it like your neighborhood. I'm already sucked into this theme like crazy. Is that really all the pictures we've got? Literally, come on, there's got to be more than 5 pictures for this game. No, there literally isn't. All right, fine, I'm going to go to the actual pursuit of happiness then and find you some better pictures. But essentially it adds a sideboard. Let's just get this one in and we'll just have to make do. But there's a sideboard where you have these cards that represent your local neighborhood. So it could be walk the neighbor's dog, hold a dinner party in the street, go win the lottery, host your parents over. It's all the stuff that you would do in your suburbs. Think suburbia, something from a sitcom. And the idea is that on top of all this, where you're going through all the different like cards and getting dates and jobs and items and that, you have an extra Meeple pawn. So it's an extra action around where you can put it on this community board and you can do more than one action there. It's just it gives you a free one. And as well as getting bonuses and just doing what you normally do on all the cards, it gives you popularity as a new resource. The popularity effectively goes on, you can amass it. In fact, yeah, let me go back to that original. Yeah, that's probably the best one I can find. But the cards will come out here. You level up on this popularity track down here. Let's just take that down for a second. And it dwindles down over each round. So you've got to continue being popular with your various friends. But as you go up here, you get these points at the end of a round. So if you get up to level 5, you'll get 5 long-term happiness points at the end of the round. But in order to get to level 3, 4, and 5, you've got to really push the community aspect. Whereas if you just dabble on it or pretty much ignore it for most of the game, you'll just relate to about popularity 0, 1, and 2. And you're like, people know you live in the area, but they're not that fussed. But it's great to sort of go, you know what? My strategy for this game is I am going to focus a ton on these, these various community projects. And it's just a really cool, ciao, Kabuki Kid. We'll see you another time. Yeah, life and all. But this is just a good fun expansion. And it's not a complicated one to teach. I mean, this is essentially, these cards work in the same fashion as all these other cards. You get more of the good stuff anyway, which is always nice. All you've really got to do is just teach how the popularity bit works. So it's not a huge amount of extra rules overhead, but yeah, just that extra bit of theme. Am I going to date Susan? Am I going to go get a job as a software engineer? Am I going to go grow this bonsai tree? Do I want to build this, do I want to buy a car or go off on a vacation? And also, do I want to walk the neighbor's dog for a bit of extra cash? It just adds another dollop of theme to something I already like. And as such, I do like to throw this in now and again, even when teaching the game, just because I think it is such a cool inclusion. Now, we're going to get the nostalgia expansion at the end of this. Well, eventually. We were supposed to get it last year, but it's been delayed for various reasons. So we're all just gagging for the nostalgia expansion for this game. And, the big box so I can store the lot, because it's somewhat hard to do so at the moment. Where's the game itself? Oh, God, here we go. I'm going to break my left wrist trying to hold this thing. But, remember this? The old Stronghold style boxes and the Arpetipia ones that they use? Because Stronghold games, yep, their logo, they always use this horrible size box. But I could barely fit everything in it. I mean, this thing weighs an absolute ton. I'm just trying to get the lid off it at the moment, which I'm having, succeeding. Oh, here we go. Right, so there's that. Here we go. Whew. That is jam-packed full of stuff. Literally, I have to play Tetris with this to get everything in the box with 2 expansions. Whew. Cannot wait for a big box to store all this stuff. There we go. Because it will get that sorted. But yeah, love this game. One of my favorites ever since the first Essen I went to where I got to play this. Such a good game. And it's a cool expansion I like to play as often as I can. Right, number 6 was actually mentioned a little while ago. Not by me, but by the chat. The chat had this one, and I decided to keep silent, but this is an expansion that, again, I don't think it's essential, because I am perfectly happy to play the normal game as it is, in its normal base 2-player form, because it's such an awesome 2-player game, one of my favourites ever. But gotta say, with this expansion, it does elevate it quite substantially, and so when I can play it, I certainly do like to throw this one in. Someone already mentioned it, well done to you. Pantheon 7 Wonders Duel is, I agree, a really cool expansion for this game. Now, already, just having god powers that you can trigger for various abilities, that in itself is already cool. Alright, I like that aspect, and it gives you another reason to use money. But the great thing with this, on top of just getting a little bit more of the good stuff, and okay, whenever those two, but these god powers that you have, you basically pay money and you can trigger them at your heart's content. Trying to find the actual board that they use. So yeah, there's a little board here that goes above your normal Seven Wonders Duel board, and they are flipped down, I think, to begin. Oh no, they're not there to begin with. What you have, sorry, I will find a decent photo. Well, this will do. You've got these tokens here. They're face down and they're put on the cards that you put out for drafting. And as you go through the first and second era, well, as you go through the first era, you grab the tokens, which allows you to put the cards on the board. And the second era, you get to do something similar to that. So you build this up as the game goes on. Eventually, though, these, one of the colors of each of these, so you've got like the normal one, you've got the blue, the green, the yellow, and the red. These will get set up by you around this board, and the costs are different for yourself and your opponent. So you might think, well, I don't particularly want this power. The opponent might want it though, so I'll make it really cheap for myself and really expensive for them. That's already a cool decision. So with all these bod powers, it changes the game up each time, adds a new decision, but this is the thing. This is like the key aspect here. When you play Seven Wonders Duel normally, you have a situation where if I'm going to draft one of these cards off the tableau, you are going to have to draft next. Then me, then you, then me. The only exception to this rule is when somebody gets an extra turn symbol triggered, right? Seven Wonders Duel Pantheon, on the other hand, allows you to mess up that order. So you can have a situation where it's like, I draft a card, you draft a card. Oh, I don't like what's there. Well, hang on a minute. I got a spare $6 here. I'm going to trigger one of the god powers. That you do not have to draft a card for. So I pay $6, I trigger this god power, and then after resolving its effect, you have to draft the next card. Do you have enough money for a god use? Apparently not. Draft a card, please, and free up that lovely little science card I want. Just being able to do that is brilliant. It really does throw a good extra spanner in the game works trying to do it, and it's just that is the key feature I get from this expansion, as if the rest of it isn't already good. I do admit, James, that the solo expansion for this game is fantastic. It's print and play. You have to get it from Asmodee's website or Repos Productions website. It's one of the two. But yeah, the solo expansion for this is great. But I figured I would stick away from print and plays on this one. And to be honest, like I say, that expansion is purely there so I can play it solo. It's just a variant. This is an actual expansion that people can get easily and buy retail, and so definitely wanted to stick it in there. Has there been any good rants or anything spicy? Well, spicy? I wouldn't say anything spicy, but there's certainly been enough great games so far. And certainly I think everybody is kind of in agreement with this one. So it was mentioned earlier, I was thinking let's just keep this one a little bit silent. I didn't want to go too mad on this, but I thought I'd reveal it later on. So yeah, Seven Wonders Duel Pantheon, I agree wholeheartedly with you. Brilliant expansion. And women OT. I bet we're getting royalties from DICE for this. Right, number 5. Number 5 we have got, oh yes. This one you might argue was kind of incorporated in a re-implementation of technically the same game. And I know that's the most cryptic way I could put it. But essentially this game came out a fair while ago actually. And it made a pretty good, made a good buzz. And then there was a trilogy of these particular games, and then they released another trilogy of games. You might already recognize the publisher by now. It's, yes, Garphill Games. They released a re-implementation of this game, where some of these expansion elements were incorporated in it. However, after playing it, I'm not exactly... I can see the pros and cons of both, but I prefer to play this with the expansion. And by this, I mean Raiders of the North Sea, and by the expansion, I mean Hall of Heroes. Hall of Heroes is easily the best of the 2 expansions you get. Now, will I throw it into every single one I play? Probably not. But certainly, I want to put it in pretty much every game I teach. But like I say, if somebody says, oh, I don't have Hall of Heroes, I'm not going to say, well, I'm not playing your game then, if they want to play Raiders. I'm totally happy other way. So that's why I wouldn't call it essential, though it was, close. It certainly was close for that one. But essentially what this one does is, besides adding more of the crew, which is always good, it's always great to have more crew, you have essentially more options in the game for what to do, and that's always a good thing. The board, or in my case, the succulent playmat, I love the playmat I've got for this, it adds this new mead hall here. You can go to this mead hall and you can grab these well, you've got little objective tiles that you can grab, which if you make a certain condition, you get the objective tile, which is cool. But mainly what happens is when you go and raid on these locations, a quest tile, sorry, appears on the space. And it's like trade in so many resources and get so many points. But you can grab those by going to this mead hall. But on top of that, it allows you to recruit various villagers, but also gain mead. And mead is used as a temporary strength boost when you go raiding. And this makes raiding a lot more accessible, because usually it's like, well, I better get all the high strength people then, otherwise I'm not going to be able to raid at all. If you can get a good supply of mead going, which with a couple of crew members you can very easily, you can be like swimming in mead, you essentially get to, go to those high strength raids on the basis that you don't have the best crew ever, but then you just simply, you go and spend a ton of mead. You get drunk, you're pretty much invulnerable for the raid, and then you suddenly realize you've got no more mead and you need to get more mead or get better crew. So it does a great job. In fact, here we go, yeah. Gain 2 mead before going on a quest. So I tend to have a brewer in my crew, and then what I do is I do a couple of quests on top of normal stuff. I end up with a bucket load of mead, and then I go on a big raid, as a one-off, and just blitz the raid. So it's always good fun to use it. But that's the main thing. I think it adds an extra couple of spaces up here, up the top corner, the top right corner. I think that was in this expansion. I can't remember if it was this one or the next one, but that's a minor thing. A couple of extra spaces is all well and good though. Mainly though, it's just these quest tiles where you can just trade in, here you go, a gold and a livestock, get 3 points. But it means that when other people do raiding, you could try and get points by grabbing those quest tiles. And not only are you getting points for the quest tiles, but you're also, wait a minute, no, that's the chieftains, thing, the longhouse. Let's see if I can find an example of said quest tiles. Here we go. Yeah, so with these, what you have to do is you have to discard crew members from your hand to equal the strength or more. And you get the quest tile, you get some rewards from it, but mainly it goes above your player board where you get to score a lot of points if you focus on quest tiles. If you just dabble in them, they're not going to get you many extra points, but they're nice to do every now and again. But you can make a good strategy of going for a ton of these, particularly if you can get multiple sets of them for those various objective tiles. I mentioned those. It's it's a really cool expansion, and it's an easy include as well. If you're going to teach Raiders of the North Sea, you can teach this mead hall without too much trouble, but it adds a good amount of theme to what is already like a cool sort of fairly thematic Viking style game. More variety, more ways to do raids, more ways to get points. It's always a good job. It just means you got to store a few extra player boards, which is a bit of a pain. Although the player boards telling you things like the restrictions for what you can have and having spots for your crew and storage for your resources and meeple can be quite handy as well. So that's never necessarily a bad thing. This is definitely one of the best ones for playmats. The playmat for this is so gorgeous, as I love it to bits. But yeah, it's a cool one. The second expansion is fine, but I don't throw it into every game. It's one where you go and kill chieftains and you get what's it called? Is it honor? It's honor or glory or some other track that you level up. But basically, I get to kill chieftains, therefore people fear me a bit more. It's okay, but the rules for it are a little bit clunky, and I don't throw it into every single game. Hence, it would never make this list. Whereas this one, I can throw into the game without a second thought, and it will do just fine. So, Halls of Heroes for Raiders of the North Sea. As was mentioned earlier, I believe I am definitely looking forward. Where is it? I'm certain somebody mentioned it before. well, yeah, same comment actually. Yes, anxious to get the mats for Architects. Sooner or later, we're going to get that expansion. Works of Wonder for Architects of the West Kingdom. Cannot wait. That is something I really want to get. A big box, a playmat, and a new expansion for one of the best worker placement games in existence. Yeah, definitely looking forward to that one. So, what was that one? That was my number... Ooh, what was that? That was my 5. So, on the 4s. Okie dokie, number 4. This one's been mentioned before, and I think people would have literally torn me apart had I not put this on the list, because, I can understand why. I love it. It's in my copy of the game, which is right down in the bottom corner. It's like one of the bottom corner games in my collection. And to be honest, I haven't played this in a while. I've played it once, I think, in the last couple of years. Again, not because I don't like the game, it's just the fact that, well, lots of games, I review games, I have a life, you can only play them so often, but I don't think this expansion is essential. I don't think it quite gets there yet, but it was teetering. I will play this game without the expansion though. I will miss this expansion a lot though if you don't throw it in. People have already mentioned it, so without further ado, whoop, where's that banner gone? There we go. Scoundrels of Skullport, Lords of Waterdeep. Lords of Waterdeep is already a really cool worker placement game, one of the best sort of gateway level ones. But yeah, if you've got Scoundrels, you've elevated this game to another level of enjoyment. It really is solid. This one basically adds a couple of... where we go. Get it in. There we go. Adds a couple of extra boards where you can go put your workers, which is great. More action spaces, all good and good. More quests that you can go on, more characters that you can start with, all well and good. Now, if it was just that, this wouldn't count, because it would just be more of the good stuff. What the idea is, though, is that as well as those extra action spaces, let's get over those. Where do we go? You got more buildings, which is always well and good, but I need to find it. Here we go. Perfect. The corruption track. This corruption track is what makes this expansion. It's essentially a bunch of skull tokens that give you negative points for each skull that you have. But the value of each skull token goes up the more of these skull tokens that are taken, and some of these new action spots on the board, as well as the... I don't know if you can see my mouse pointer. Whoop, get back in there. Now you can. So some of these action points, action spaces, give you skulls for corruption. Gives you a lot of resources, but then you got to take the skulls. And some of the new quests, like this one here, this one is like, oh, I can just put in a bunch of cubes of whatever I like. Oh, that's fairly easy. And I get a lot of points and some white cubes and a lot of corruption. It's like you got to sort of balance it out. But because this is a group thing, everybody is basically taking these skull tokens, and so how much they're worth is dependent on what the other players are doing. If one person does it by themselves, they could get away with murder effectively, because these won't be that bad for them. But then if 3-4 players start taking these corruption tokens, you got a bit more wary, and you want to start getting rid of them. I love corruption mechanics in games. Well, I don't want to spoil just in case, but certain other games that have done corruption. Well, I can spoil one. Cleopatra and the Society of Architects. That didn't have an expansion. But that one, you actually lost the game outright if you didn't have... If you had the most corruption. You just outright lost. So you're always panicking, thinking, I've done pretty well on points, but did I take one too many corruption? I don't know. That is such a cool thing. And I love it in this one. It's just... It adds a new dimension to the game, and having all the extra variety of cards, everything was boosted. This is the kind of expansion that Star Wars Outer Rim needs, and it is getting with the Unfinished Business expansion. But can that one do for Outer Rim what this one did for Lords of Waterdeep? Because if it can, it'll be fantastic and would be like a contender for a future list of this. But yeah, definitely solid in this respect. What's my opinion on Wayfarers of the South Tigris? I've no idea. I haven't really looked it up. I tend to not get hyped up. I just know that, I want to see more games from Garphill Games, because they've done some great stuff, and some of my favorite games in my collection, 3 of them are Garphill Games. But I'm interested to see what they do with this new trilogy. I just haven't really done much. I don't like watching playthroughs of stuff from Kickstarter channels because they're just hyping the game up. They're just trying to get you to buy it on Kickstarter. You know, I want to, you know, there are only so many people I will trust with that sort of thing. And I'm more intent to like do my own research when I see the Kickstarter. But, you know, I'm excited for more stuff from Garphill Games. I'm just, like I say, I'm more picky with Kickstarters now when, you know, although to be honest, I mean, unless the mechanics are something that I really don't like auctions and stuff, I'll probably still back it as an auto back anyway. But, you know, I can't get any, you know, I won't be getting it for review because New Zealand to Britain equals stupid amounts of postage costs. But, you know, I need to, you know, and I know that people like Brothers Murph and a few others have done it. But again, they're there to hype the game. I can't go by that. I'm not interested in watching other people play a game often because I want to see how I enjoy the game. You know, watching other people play Sentinels in the Multiverse is not as fun by a long shot as me playing Sentinels in the Multiverse. Goes for any other of those playthroughs. And so, and even then, Kickstarter channels are just there to hype a game up. They're not there to give you an opinion on whether the game has got flaws or anything. They're just there to say, go, look at this, look at this, look at this, buy it and subscribe to our channel. It's just not my style. As for the Lord of the Rings Nightmare decks, they're not essential by any means. Only get them if you are insanely good at the game and you want a challenge, because let's face it, they will give you a challenge. Anyway, I've stuck on this for too long. Let's move on to, I believe, oh, let's double check before I go on the brand, otherwise that will look weird. Freeze, here we go. Okie doke. Right, number three. Number three. Oh, yes, this one. To be fair, we've just been talking about Garphill Games, so there's not much to really segue into this one. I don't know, maybe it is the perfect segue. I already mentioned I am looking forward to Works of Wonder, but that's not to say that the previous expansion, Artisans, isn't fantastic anyway. Artisans was one, I think this was like the last time I ever got a review copy of anything from them. Oh no, I did a Chaos Order, their new Kickstarter, so I did get the old thing from them. But, you know, it costs a lot to post. So Age of Artisans, though, is a fantastic expansion. This one has, you know, this one I pretty much teach every single time I teach the game. But if you told me it wasn't in the game, I'm fine with that. It is so close to being essential, but it's not quite. The thing is, why I teach this all the time, though, is because it's such an easy include. It really is. If you know how to play, if you're being taught how to play Architects for the first time, this really doesn't add that much in way of complicated mechanics. In fact, you can pretty much just ignore some of the base game stuff and teach this new stuff to replace it, and they would never know it was an expansion. Essentially, what you've got is, again, more of the good stuff. You've got some more apprentices, which are my favorite aspect of the game. You've got some more buildings and a couple of extra different spaces. But what you get with this is essentially the Guildhall board is replaced with, annoyingly, a tile, which is a bit of a pain, but, oh well, it's just the way it is. I look forward to getting a play mat for this. But what it does is it adds, well, firstly, the two main cards it adds, tools and improvements. Let's see if I can find some better pictures of said cards. Well, there's an example of one being used. Tools are these red banner. Well, they basically are a card. Damn it, I need to find a better picture, actually. There's got to be one around here somewhere. My kingdom for something that illustrates my point. Here we go. Lovely. So these new cards are added in, and they are tools and improvements, the red and the yellow respectively. And the idea is that when you go to the Guildhall space, you normally put a meeple down, you leave them there forever, and they build you cathedral or building. What you can do now is you can stick one of your meeples on top of one of the other meeples that you had, and essentially doubling it up, and you can grab one of these. Now, tools are free. The improvements cost you money, an element of tax and normal money. More detail on that in a minute of why I think that's amazing, but the improvements go and slot underneath your buildings and give you not only the victory points, so it's another path to victory, but you also get this instant bonus, which, as you can see, are pretty awesome bonuses. I mean, a free apprentice, 3 more cards, 2 more virtue, reuse a green power again. It's like, whew, pretty nice. But the best thing I like is the tools are free. You slot them underneath an apprentice, as I showed before. And what essentially you get, if I can see it, is your apprentice Well, that's a nice big one. Can I get anything else? Come on. Yeah, this apprentice. So what it does is that it gives the apprentices more abilities. So with the silversmith here, you go to the silversmith one and you get an extra coin. You could slot a tool underneath it that gets you a stone. So every time you use that apprentice, it not only gets you a coin, but it also gets you a stone. It basically makes your apprentices more powerful, but customizable. And you can put these tools on any of them. It doesn't matter which one you do, they work on all your apprentices. And that's just great fun to do. It's, being able to customize my apprentices, which is my favorite aspect of the game anyway, for no money, is already good. Now, somebody has mentioned it's the Spend Your Silver expansion. Also, hello, Stephen. But with this one, what he means by Spend Your Silver is in the base game, you sometimes ended up with too much money. Like, you just could not spend this much money in the game. So what this one does is the bit where I said about buying, let's see, here we go. Yeah, this part here, this is the cost of buying the improvement. Now you have something to spend your silver on. If you're awash with silver, go get yourself an improvement, because chances are you've built a building at some point in your life, and now you can get some cool bonus and have a use for that silver. Yes, your meeples are going to be stuck here until the end of the game, so this is sucking up your worker resource, but now silver has a use and it's not just wasted, because if you're trying to get 1 point for every 10 silver at the end of the game, you're losing, because frankly that is a stupid goal to aim for. But it's so like ridiculous they even bother putting that as a point scoring mechanism. But yeah, tools, improvements, a new way, more apprentices, more buildings. This is just such a good expansion. But those are, I'm probably explaining it a bit weird because I'm trying to do this on a live stream. But honestly, when I'm teaching this game, this is such an easy thing to teach that I will throw it into every game that I am teaching of Architects of the West Kingdom. But if other people didn't want to, not a big deal. I mean, for the fact that you've even got another color, you can play this with 6 players now, and you have the orange characters who are pretty decent abilities, actually, the orange ones. Oh, and the artisan meeple, I forgot about that. It's a bigger meeple that you put down on a space, and it counts as 2 workers, for the time you put it down. Simple rule, but it's another cool factor of this. But honestly, I thought that playing this with 6 players would be horrible. I thought like, oh no, why am I doing this? But honestly, I played a 6-player game of this. I was teaching 4 new players. We finished the game in 90 minutes. 90 minutes to 2 hours, I think, including the teach, was the total length for the game with 6 of us. I kid you not. This does not drag out to like 3 hours when you have 6 players. The turns were still pretty quick. It scales really well, this game. This is one of the few worker placement games where I'm thinking, you know what? I've got 5 or 6 people. I could play Architects and have an absolute blast. It's a shame, though, for James, though, that he liked the first trilogy but couldn't get into Architects. I mean, Viscounts is a great game. Architects is a brilliant game. Well, both of them are brilliant. Yeah, Paladins is average. But honestly, the first trilogy? I mean, Raiders is fantastic. Yes, I've already mentioned that one. But I hear nobody giving praise to Shipwrights, and only a few giving praise to Explorers. Now, granted, I think I've played Shipwrights and I wasn't a fan of it. I've not played Explorers. I would like to try it, but yeah, nobody talks about those 2 games, really. But, oh man, you didn't like Architects? Or this? I mean, Architects is such a good worker placement game, but I'm not here to talk about how great Architects is. I'm here to talk about why the expansion was great, and I think I've told you pretty much everything you need to know. The expansion is solid, it's relatively cheap, adds a lot more variety, adds rules, and this is what the quality of a good expansion is. It should give you more of the good stuff. Give me more variety, because that's always good. And if you're going to throw in more expansion, like mechanics, like new stuff, they need to be easy to implement and not difficult to teach. If I can teach the game with the expansion, with the new mechanics, as easy as teaching the base game on its own, you have succeeded in your expansion. Well done. And this is a classic example of that. People do not even know that I'm teaching them an expansion half the time until I explain it to them. They wonder, why is there a weird tile for the guild hall, and why do you have to put this action space card on this one? It's like, yeah, because this is an expansion that you're being dealt here. But yeah, if it didn't have that, in fact, actually, when I get the playmat, I won't have that problem anymore. That'll be good. But I'm not holding hope, though, that the Works of Wonder expansion is going to be one that I can teach off the bat. I look forward to it, and I think it's going to be a cool expansion, especially a revised solo mode. Can't wait for that. But yeah, I don't know. It sounds like it's going to be a little bit too complex to teach in the first game. But I think it could be simple enough to teach after the first game. But yeah, I think it's, I mean, it's wishful thinking to think that you can have 2 expansions to a game and teach them all at the same time. You know, for easily new ones. Is the Tome Saga worth it? Maybe. I only know of a couple of people that have used it and they've enjoyed it. The problem is you have to have all 3 games and enjoy all 3 games. Now, I don't like Paladins enough to own it anymore. I got rid of it a while back. So I can't use Tome Saga as far as I'm aware because I don't have Paladins. So I've never really had a chance to try it out. But yeah, if you're a devout fan of in fact, yeah, Ashley can explain it. So it is fun, but yeah, you need the same people, you need all 3 games as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just, like I say, it's a very niche product. If you've got all 3 and you love all 3, then honestly, I don't see how you can go wrong with it, but, you know, it's just a case that you've got to be in that niche group. Alrighty, on to 2s. Tea is getting cold. Alright, but tea is good, even if it is decaf. Right, okay, number 2s. Oh yes, this is another one where, in fact, actually, just to confirm, you go through all 3 games. Yes, you do. But this one, again, people were going to tear my head off if I didn't put this on, but I almost didn't think it qualified for the list, because this is really stretching my caveats that I mentioned earlier in the video. Now, it is one of my favourite games of all time, but I had to think, hang on a minute, does this fail the caveat of just being more of the good stuff? And technically, it is essentially more of the good stuff, which is all great, but what does it add that's new? Well, it technically adds some mechanics that are new to the game, but you saw them in a previous expansion. And so I thought, well, hang on a minute, can I include this one then? And the previous expansion I said was essential. People might think this one's essential. But it's like, well, what if you didn't have that first expansion? What if that wasn't available to you and you only had this one? It does technically add some new content beyond just more variety. So for those, this would be another expansion and would fit the list. So I was really like, how on earth am I going to justify this? But I don't know. I'll let the comments and lot people like kill me for this one, but honestly, I love the game so much, I just want to talk about it anyway. Yes, of course, Jagged Earth for Spirit Island. This is such a fantastic expansion for a fantastic game, but I had to think, is this stretching the caveat? Because all of these new spirits that you can play are just more of the same. All the new cards that you get are essentially more of the same. But you do get some new stuff. You get the Badland tokens, which is another token that goes alongside, well, actually more so, in fact, because in the original box, you didn't get the tokens. In fact, yeah, this actually supports my argument more. Hee great. But you didn't get these tokens. Where are they? Come on, where are those special tokens? Well, to mention it, Branch and Claw is the one that I put on the what do you call it? The essential one, because I figured it was such a small inclusion to the game that was already quite complex that it was worth like saying, oh yeah, you could grab this as an essential purchase. Some people wanted it to be that, but here we go. See if I can zoom in a bit more for these. Can I? Come on. Can I zoom in more? Scroll. Down. Here we go. That'll do. So these tokens, I remembered you got them in Branch and Claw. You didn't get them in this. So you essentially, if you don't have Branch and Claw, these Beast tokens, the Badland tokens, the Disease tokens, the Wild tokens, the Strife tokens will all be completely new. There'll be totally new mechanics. So it is basically like if you have to skip one expansion because of stock, you have new mechanics. The Isolate rule, I'm a little bit more touch and go on. I kind of find that to be a little bit on the fiddly side to use, hence I don't tend to play the Finder of Paths Unseen very much. But having all the tokens is a good thing. On top of that, it brought in the Events deck. So some people are more hit and miss on the Events deck. I personally love the Events deck, but the events deck was in Branch and Claw, it wasn't in the base game. So now you can have the joy of those events, which I enjoy. Some people are like, oh, I want to have more skill, not as much luck. The events are good and bad. They can hose you, but they can help you as well. And I just love the thematic integration of having them in, and that slight unpredictability. It's great when the events actually go well for you, like the island's helping you a bit. But then, of course, the events can screw you over, and you've just got to deal with that. But yeah, I was kind of thinking, oh, how do I justify this for the list? And at the end of the day, after talking about it, it now justifies its inclusion more, because if you don't have Branch and Claw, then this is going to add the tokens. It's going to add even more tokens than Branch and Claw does. It's going to add the events. It's going to add a couple of extra rules. It's definitely, I think, more than just simply a well, it's not even standalone. You need the base game to play this, but it's not just a more of the same. So took a little bit of thinking to go with it, but I reckon it, I reckon it justifies its inclusion. Hello, Gio Jose. Nice of you to join us. Steve agrees with me. Nothing wrong with more of the same. It does give you new stuff also. That's the thing. And it does give you quite a decent amount of new stuff. Hence, I'm glad I could put it in. And yes, it's so good. So good. I do love... The more I talk about it, the more I want to play a game of Spirit Island now. We need to get Paul Grogan back online with some spare time so we can play some more Spirit Island. That'd be great. Two noobs playing Spirit Island. It'd be great fun. I wonder if there's anybody else I could play Spirit Island with that would be able to do some online TTS play or on the app. We'll have to see. But yeah, I love it. It's a complex game. It's well, James, you say certain if my family would like it, so not sure it would be worth it for just solo play. Take it from me, okay? I play this with a couple of friends who are more like, they are better at this game than me by far, right? And we have a blast playing it multiplayer, 2-player, 3-player, whatever. 95% of the games I have played of this have been true solo. Not even two-handed, true solo. Now, you could play with two-handed, and occasionally I do, but it's a bit more of a mind bender to get around it. But trust me, if you're worried that your family doesn't like this game or it's too complex for them, and you think, well, I don't know if it's worth it for just solo play, trust me, it really is great solo. It's like most people have this as their top favorite solo game. So the fact that that's the case means that more people want to play this solo more than it does multiplayer. Not to say it doesn't work multiplayer, but it's going to be long, it's going to be involved, and it's going to be great. But yeah, it's my second favorite. It could have been my number one, actually. In fact, if I was doing this list about the same time as... Actually, did I play that last year or this year? I think I've already played my number one by then, so maybe it still wouldn't have been my number one. But like I say, well, actually, no, it wouldn't have been, because I only got into Spirit Island last year. Oh my god, time flies. I just had my 38th birthday the other week, and I feel, not only do I feel so old, but just time is just flying. I forget when I started these things. It's all blurring. But yeah, I love Jagged Earth, but there is one expansion that just pips it, like ever so slightly just pips it. And it's good to know I've convinced you, James. I should be convincing you of more games. But yeah, definitely take a look at it, because I hid away from Spirit Island because of a very bad teach, and I didn't try it again for 3-4 years. I needed somebody to teach me it proper, and that was the click. That was like, yep, Luke, buy the game, Greater Than Games, give me more stuff, let me review it, and now I'm just obsessed. So it's kind of crazy. But yeah, so number one. This one, again, is not going to appear on anybody else's list. I guarantee you that, because you've either not heard of it, or you've only played the base game, or you don't think that this is worthy of being number one. But I had to think, I knew it was going to make the list, but when I thought about it more, I realized, wow, this was like one of my best experiences of this game. And I'd already enjoyed the game. It's one of the most thematic games that you can play at the moment, and it's story ridden, it's gritty, it's dark, and the base set, even with just its first expansion, is great enough as it is. But this is hands down the best campaign game, the best story game that I have ever played. Without a shadow of a doubt, no one's guessing this at this rate. It is easily Days of the Siege, this war of mine. Now, a lot of people don't necessarily know about this expansion. It is a campaign expansion, but normally I don't like big long campaigns. This is 3 acts, okay? 3 games. Much better length for a campaign. You might think, well, that's a bit short, isn't it? Nah, trust me. You can play this multiple times and find new stuff. Probably not going to be a lot of pictures for this one because I suspect it won't show too much of the mechanics. Now, there's a couple of little modular bits like kids that you can have, but this is not why I love this expansion. I think this is probably the best picture you're going to get. But essentially, what it does is it throws in a story-based campaign. You still play on your main board, but it's changed up a little bit. But you now have this sideboard, a map of the city that you're in. And you play through 3 acts, so you've got like a new kind of... You've got like more book of scripts, but basically you have 3 new scenario cards, and you've got Act 1, and then depending on what decision you make, by the end of that act, you've got 2 variations of Act 2, and then 2 variations of Act 3. But, wow. This is such a good story. The theme and story that you get from the book of scripts and everything that goes on is so good. So, like, oh my god, this is like Black Mirror levels of uncomfortableness at times. But I love that stuff. I love Black Mirror and I love the grittiness of this. But when you go exploring, you can go to these different little city elements and each one will find you different cards, like some are more lucrative than others. But I don't want to give away too much of the story, but basically you're still playing in the setting of the wars going on in that. But now the military are really hosing, like, they're really, like, making a difference in your local area. You meet some of the military personnel. They could be, they're not necessarily good, but are you going to be on their side? Are you going to be against them? You know, that's going to change story aspects. Again, I don't want to reveal much more than that. But this is definitely much more of a war-torn style, this War of Mine. But it was just, like, the story was just so great. It goes through all the 3 acts, so it's not episodic. It is like an overarching storyline as you progress from one to the other. But the amount of variety in this game is insane. You have, there's one point where you go to a camp and there's some story elements that you sort of see what you do next. I think I found like 3 of them, and there was 10 that I could have found. And I thought, God blimey, I thought I did a lot. Where are the other 7 then? And when I played it again, it's like, oh, wait, so there's a couple of the others. Oh, God, I had to go in a completely different direction for that. But you have these event cards on the side of this board here. So I have to, whoop, this stupid zoom thing. There you go. So this bit here, it's an event card, and these go on there, and it's like a little timeline. So they appear, and for example, one might say the bridge is being repaired. Military are giving you tins of food if you help out and build the bridge. Are you going to go and do it? And you've got 3 rounds to basically go and do it. But if you do it, some benefit will happen. But if you don't do it, might mean nothing. You might still get a benefit, but it might mean that something bad happens. Like if you don't repair the bridge, it means it's harder to get across the river in the future. But if you go and repair it, it's taking up time that you could be spending getting other resources. But you get a little bit of food, and it means that you can go across the bridge easier, and the military don't hate your guts quite as much. You know, there's a lot of good things that these events do. But I remember playing this and going, right, I'm going down this path, and then I made this decision which branched into this different path. I actually managed to complete the game in Act 2 without going to Act 3 at first because I made a certain progression of decisions. But then I rewound the tape effectively to then continue into Act 3 to see what else would happen. But yeah, you can really end up with some different endings. And minor spoiler, one of these event cards was to go to an orphanage. And I went to said orphanage, and I basically had a choice of like, do I help this orphanage out? And it's like, well, it's a bunch of kids, I really should, but they want me to bring them food and stuff? What am I supposed to do? I've got enough stuff to get on with as it is. But I thought, I don't know, I get this character, she'll help me in the future. It's story-based, I want to help this orphanage. So I made it my mission to help this orphanage. Did various side quests for them, helping kids and doing stuff. Again, I won't spoil these side quests, but it got to a point, and I know you might be crying, hang on, spoilers here, but this is one event card out of a lot of different event cards, and it has different branching paths. Trust me, you could do the exact same stuff I'm doing and not get the same outcome. But basically, I helped them out, and then eventually I had to shift them off to a different spot. The military was just getting too crazy, places were getting shelled, and we are, right, I got to find you a new place. There's several options, but I'm struggling to stay alive at this point. I don't have time to look at more than one place. So I went to the first place, looked at it and thought, seems okay, doesn't sound too bad. I'll bring them there. Brought them there, great. Got some resources and that and went away. Then I got to the end of the game and I looked at the epilogue for the various side quests. One of them being the orphanage. And it's like, oh, did they survive? Was it all good? They got bombed. It's like literally all the work I'd done for it for nothing. Because I took them to the wrong location. It was too hot, too close to the military zone, and it suffered for it. And it's like, oh my god, that is like Black Mirror style ending, that you go for this whole storyline and then it punches you in the gut at the very end. Oh, but it felt good. It was just such a good, I was so immersed in it that it had that effect. And that's what Days of the Siege does. This is just, 3 acts, 3 games, doesn't take you long to get through it. There's a little bit of rules learning to get into how this new board works, but otherwise it's kind of what you've been doing before. And honestly, this is kind of the way that I want to play this war of mine from now on, with the exception of those extra scenarios you got in the first expansion. But I will never play base set this war of mine again. Never. I will use one of the special scenarios, or I will play through this 3-act campaign. That is how much I think it's so good. Of course, not essential, because you need to be used to the game and like it first. It's not going to change your opinion on the game if you don't like it to begin with. But yeah, and before you say 50-50 chance, I'm pretty certain I had 3 options. So I think it was a 1 in 3 chance that I had, and I got it wrong. So, I got one of the 2 options you couldn't have. So yeah, oh well, that was a bit of a downer. But yeah, honestly, such a good game, such a good fit. And like I say, you've got to be into it. You need to know this is dark, gritty, and if you thought this war of mine was too dark and gritty for you, this takes it up another level, okay? This is definitely really going down the dark and gritty route. Put it this way, does conscripted children in the army make you uncomfortable? This might, if that kind of thing makes you uncomfortable, you might want to reconsider this. But yeah, I've raved about it too much. It is just so good. Such a good game. I love it, love it, love it. So, it's, an hour and 10 minutes. Not too bad for a stream. I don't want this to go on too long. I'll probably wrap this up about an hour 15. But let me know in the chat. Which ones, let's have a say, tell me about some expansions that you thought I should have mentioned or I didn't mention. I will explain why. Hello to you, best at Star Trek. Could you get in touch with Paramount and tell them to make Picard a decent series? Because seriously, I'm getting sick and tired of how much they keep mucking it up. Discovery's alright, but I just, God, what are they doing to Picard? But otherwise, good. Maybe Strange New Worlds would be good. But anyway, back to expansions. Where are we going? James, what would you say about the expansions for Marvel Champions? Essential or non-essential? Well, it's just more content. I mean, they're great. There are some that are better than others, but at the end of the day, it's more heroes and more villains and more cards. They don't introduce much in a way of, if any, maybe like a keyword here and there, but it's just more of the same. They wouldn't count for this list, and it's down to you. Do you think there's enough content? Are you getting bored with the stuff you've got at the moment? If so, buy one of them. One of them will last you long enough. 5 big boxes, 5 new villains and a couple of heroes. That's plenty of extra content, really. If you're happy with the villains you've got, just buy some of the hero packs. You can literally do what you like, but it's just more of the same. Somebody mentioned Empires of the North earlier. They are good expansions, and I did do a video on my channel, actually, talking about how each of them worked and what I thought of them, but again, it's more of the same. They're great. I wouldn't call them essential. Are you getting bored with the factions that you have in Empires in the North? If so, grab one of them and you've got 2 extra factions to play with. They're cheap, they're cool, nice to have, they're all in the box, they'll fit in there if you take the insert out. But yeah, not essential, but also I've already done a video on it and it's just more of the same. It wouldn't qualify for a list like this. Bad News Bears. Interesting. Bad News Bears. Now, that is actually in my copy of Baron Park here. Not essential. I mean, firstly, it's extra rules, which for a gateway game is a dangerous thing to do. It's a great expansion. I also hate the way it doesn't store in the box properly. That gets on my wick. But, even with an insert, it's got to have box lift in that. I mean, seriously, Could you have not made a slightly bigger box? Would it have killed them to do it? But I don't know. But yeah, it's a cool expansion, but I wouldn't put it in my top 10 at all. Let's scroll back a bit. Yes, somebody had been, Carlos has been shouting at me for this. Fractures of Time. Fractures of Time is a cool expansion for Anachrony. But as I proved by playing Anachrony with 3 friends of mine the other day on Tabletop Simulator, if it's not in the game, I honestly don't care. It's a cool expansion, but it's a lot of extra complexity on top of a game that's already insanely complex. There's only so much you need to add in terms of complexity to a game. Even Mindclash need to realize this. But it's a great expansion, and the stuff in it is really cool. But by no means will I teach this to new players, and certainly we won't even use it all the time, because half the time we'll forget what the rules to the expansion are. So it's great, but yeah, not top 10 worthy by a long shot. What else have we got? Missed the first part of the video. Did Kraken feature? No, that would have been my 11 or 12, I believe. I'll show this one off, actually, because I really probably should show more on the screen. But Kraken Abyss, I think it was my 11 or 12. The problem with that one is some of it is not as good as I would like. Yeah, the loot deck in the Kraken expansion is absolute garbage. Like, never use it in any game. But I do like the corrupted currency that you have in this game with the black pearls that you use in order to, like, with these wild tokens. Yeah, oops, sorry. Let's see if I can scroll by. Here you go. So you get these wild allies that you can take. You've got corrupted currency, which is negative points. You might get the Kraken miniature if you've got too many of them, which is more negative points. And you get a few extra lords. It's a cool mechanic. I mean, the fact that you can spend this corrupted currency and give it to other players and that is all well and good, but it's not, I don't think it was top 10 worthy. It was like, probably in my 11 to 15, but I just thought, like, you know, especially with the loot deck being absolute garbage, I thought it wasn't, like, worthy. I'm just trying to find my original Google Drive list. Here we go. So, yeah, here was another one. Oblivion. Who remembers that from Sentinels of the Multiverse? Well, see if I can even remember how to spell it. This one, I think I would get absolutely, like, completely ripped apart if I was to put this in my favorite expansions. But it's stupidly complicated. It's going to be a 2 to 3 hour game to play this. It's going to burn your brain, even in solo mode. But it did create one of the most thematic superhero games I've ever played, because it's basically like playing Infinity War combined with the multiverse. It's like, you know, into the Infinity War multiverse is basically what this game is. Nowhere near essential. Only for the die-hard, super cult hardcore fans of Sentinels in the Multiverse. But I did enjoy it when I played it. But I probably would not play it a lot. It's going to be a while before I play it again. It's just so insane. It's one of those types of expansions. The Runestone expansions, no, they're not essential, and I mean, they'd be in my, not even my 11 to 15. I mean, they're good expansions, but they are such simple inclusions that they're pretty much just auto-include. The second one, the Rune Forest or whatever it is, I actually wouldn't throw into every game that I teach first players. I certainly keep all the rune stones, but I don't teach that sideboard as often, because the sideboard is a little bit ineffectual, really. It doesn't add a ton to the game, but it's an easy one to include for most people. This one, Nocturnal Creatures, gets thrown into every game because literally all you have to do is throw in this stuff. It's so straightforward, it's like, why would you not include it? So these are 2 expansions that you can get and throw into the game, but honestly, if they didn't exist and I just played Runestone's base game, I wouldn't even blink an eyelid. So they're cool, but they're no means essential. Ooh, that's a good one. Fort, Cats and Dogs. It's a cool expansion, but again, I've played Fort. In fact, I played Fort the other day. I taught some new players it, and this is one of those games, actually, I probably should mention on the podcast, on the news segment of games I've not actually reviewed that I should talk about. But, yeah, maybe I'll do that for this Sunday. But, yeah, Cats and Dogs is a great little expansion. Fort is this brilliant little deck builder where you're building a fort, but the cards in your deck might get taken by other players if you don't play with the kids enough. It's such a cool theme in a deck builder. Cats and Dogs, you've got the dogs which you try to take care of for points, but it's hard to take care of them, and if you don't, they go away. But I love the cats in this. The cats are essentially like little Yeah, these ones over here. The cats go to different yards based on what's in them. So they might be in your yard because you've got more than 2 book cards in there. The problem is, as soon as somebody else meets the condition, the cat goes off. It buggers off and goes somewhere else. It does what cats do. They're fickle. So thematically, it's brilliant. And it's a nice, easy expansion to include. Like, you could teach it with this expansion, no problem. I think this would actually be an 11 to 15, actually. To be honestly fair, I didn't think of it when I was coming up with the list. But yeah, I think it would be somewhere 15 or lower. I think this would definitely be like in there as a good one. Food Chain Magnate expansion, garbage. So what's next? It's called Ketchup, for crying out loud. What have we got? Yeah, still can't believe I didn't pick Kraken. It was 11. Give me a break. But Leviathan is the essential expansion, which was on the other list. Kraken is a good expansion, but honestly, if you gave me Abyss and just Leviathan without Kraken, I'd be fine. I wouldn't really miss that much. Ashley's got some suggestions here. Parks Nightfall. I don't enjoy Parks enough to have cared about the expansion. I mean, it's just basically Splendor mixed with Tokaido and add an extra hour of playtime. It's like, nah, I'd rather play Splendor and Tokaido. Orleans Invasion, not played. Sagrada, did that have an expansion? I don't remember having an expansion, but the Sagrada is meh for me. I mean, I've got Role Player. Why would I play Sagrada again? And as I say, yeah, I like Abyss. I love Abyss. It's one of my favorite games, but Base Abyss is still great, but Leviathan is the expansion to get. If you have a choice between Kraken and Leviathan, you get Leviathan, hands down. Mystic Veil. Oh, Mystic Veil. I did consider that. That was on my short list. But they're not essential because A, they're overpriced, and B, they basically just add more of the same and maybe leaders, which is cool. But Conclave is one that I did consider because firstly, it's a big box storage, which if you've got enough of the cards, you're going to need it. But it adds, I think, some leaders and some of those other cards as well, which is cool. The main thing it does, though, is it adds an Equinox variant to the game. Because if you play this with 3 or 4 players, it's going to take a while to finish the game. But what Equinox does, it introduces these tiles that separate 2 separate tableau areas of cards that you can build. So, you know, these cards, yeah, it does give you some leaders. So you have got some cool stuff in there. But basically, I'm afraid there's no pictures that are going to show it well enough on here. And this is a god-awful sort of resolution picture here, but basically it gives you 2 tableaus of cards that you can buy from, and 2 players take their turn simultaneously. So I could be taking my turn buying from this particular tableau, the player opposite me on the table is taking their go as well at the same time, buying from a different tableau that I can't buy from. And then this sun token, sun and night token revolve around the table, so when us 2 have done our turns, the next 2 do their turns, then us 2, then those 2, then us 2, then those 2. Otherwise, it's the same game, but it adds a bit to the setup of the game, and it's a little bit more fiddly to operate, but it cuts the time of playing multiplayer Mystic Veil in half. It is a very good expansion, but it's more die-hard. I wouldn't teach the game with it, and most of the time I prefer to play Mystic Veil like on the app, or 2-player, 3-player max, or solo. Is it soloable? I can't remember if it had solo rules or not. I thought it did, but it's been a while since I played Mystic Veil. You know, I give the edge to, funny enough, Edge of Darkness, no pun intended. Okay, what else have we got? Baron Park, not essential. I mean, yeah, as I say, I think it's a good expansion. I just don't think that expansion was essential. Most recommended mini expansion. Mini expansion. I mean, what do you mean by mini expansion? I need a bit more detail on that. What do you mean by mini expansion? Everdell Belfair lets the fourth person to actually see the board by getting rid of the tree. I mean, there is that. I mean, I like that tree. It looks cool. But Everdell, I've kind of burnt out on a bit. You know, it was getting played a lot. And I like it. I still give it respect. But the first expansion was pretty pointless. The second expansion I've not played. And I have played elements of Belfair, but I didn't really think much of them. I need to play it with that. What is it called? I forget. Stone something. It begins with S. It's the second one, I think. It's where you've got the rabbit and it goes up an adventure path and you get these mounts and stuff. It sounds cool. I've not played it with that. And I would like to see what the game is like if I just had that expansion included. But now they've got 2 more expansions released for it on Kickstarter. And I think it's just getting to the part where it's just far too bloated. Like, way too bloated. Ever played with the Pillars of the Earth expansion? Nope. Because, well, if you thought saffron was hard to get as a spice, well, imagine a type of saffron that actually de-aged you as you ate it. That's basically how rare the Pillars of the Earth expansion is. It's nigh on impossible to find, but I would love to try it. Sadly, I just don't think I'll ever set eyes on it. Expedition leaders, I did consider. That was on the shortlist for Lost Ruins of Arnak. I thought, this is a really great expansion. I do love playing it, but if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be that fussed, and I certainly would not necessarily teach it to new players because those extra player powers and the new tracks for research do add a little bit of complexity that I think is a bit too much for new players to the game, but do love it. It is a great expansion. Barrage expansion. Are you just coming up with expansions for games that you know I hate? So that's not going to help. Yeah, Carlos knows I hate Barrage. Barrage can... Bleh. You know, in looks, gameplay, punishing nature. God, I hate Barrage. Seven Wonders. Now, leaders, I had to make a quick change to this list, actually. You want to know why Pantheon sort of entered on the list? Because I remembered it at the last minute, but also remembered at the last minute after checking my Essentials video that I already put Seven Wonders leaders on the Essential Expansions video. I almost had it on this one. It's like, whoops, need a replacement. And it's like, oh yeah, Seven Wonders do. How have I not thought of that? And literally the transition happened about 10 minutes before this list was to go on air. So yeah, that one, you know, leaders is essential as far as I'm concerned for Seven Wonders. Targi expansion. To be honest, I've got it. It's sitting in my copy of Targi in the other room. I've not played it yet because it's a two-player game and I never get two-player games to the table anymore. But I will not get rid of Targi because Targi is such a good game. But I have a feeling I'll probably agree with you on the fact that I won't take it out of the game now. But I just haven't had a chance to find out how good it is. Evening to you, Matt. Where did Tuscany fall in my ranking? It fell at number 2 or 3 on the essential expansions list. Yeah, Tuscany is essential for viticulture. You need those structure cards. You need the advanced visitors. You need the like the Mama and Papa's thing, but especially you need the board. You will never play with the base set board ever again once you have tried the 4-season board that Tuscany gives you. Guaranteed. And yes, I do know about the co-op expansion that was just announced by Stonemeyer. I'll talk a bit more about that in the news on the podcast. I would say Nemesis is an essential expansion for Mystic Vale if you want to play it solo. Well, granted, yeah, because I think it included the solo rules, didn't it? But I mean, essential, I mean, that's a very niche essential. Prelude was on my essential expansions list. Well, like I say, I've got Ark Nova. Why would I ever play Terraforming Mars ever again? But even I had to say that Prelude was essential for that game. It just was. I think that's all of them. I can't think of any others. Is there any on my list that I didn't mention? Well, now that we mentioned Seven Wonders, yeah, Cities I did consider. I did consider Cities. Cities was a cool expansion for Seven Wonders, but if it's not in there, I won't mind. But I would like it if it was in there. Just not top 10 material. How can you disagree about Tuscany? I mean, seriously, the base set board is not as anywhere near as good as that 4-season board. But what else? Kraken Abyss I had. Conclave was on the short list. Oblivion I've mentioned. This is the one that people might have... Well, actually, I'm surprised nobody thought I was going to mention this one. But for Fields of Arle... Tea and Trade, because I do talk a lot about this game, and Tea and Trade is a cool expansion for this game. But the reason why I probably should take that down a notch, actually, from 10 to 9 or something, but, oh no, he's talking about viticulture when he says bloat. Tea and Trade is a cool expansion for Fields of Arle, and you could argue that maybe there's bloat in that one, you know, like crying out loud. Fields of Arle already has enough stuff in there. Do you really need more? Well, the ship stuff is cool. I mean, fishing ships and exporting to different countries for stuff is really cool. Building ditches is a good way to irrigate your land without having to do it another manual way. More variety, more buildings. Playing it with 3 players is really cool because it's more contention for spaces, but it deducts 2 rounds off the game and gives you some quick start rules to balance out the fact that you're playing it with 3 players so it doesn't take any longer to play. It's a cool system, but it's not top 10 material because I play this game solo most of the time, so the 3-player thing doesn't come up very often. Although, side note, I did actually play it in my at the convention, I taught two of my friends it. One of them really liked it. The other one was kind of, yeah, that's cool, but he prefers Caverna, which is fine. And I think she preferred Caverna as well. I think they like Caverna more. But honestly, if you're going to enjoy this game and say Caverna is better for you, then who am I to complain about that? But I love Fields of Arle, love it. Solo sandbox farming game. Tea and Trade is a cool expansion, but by no means essential. If it wasn't in the game, you'd have plenty enough in the box to deal with it. Legendary Encounters Alien expansion adds more stuff, adds more cards. It's basically more of the same, but honestly, the Queen rules are kind of weird. Nobody really plays that. It's a fine expansion, but it's by no means great or essential. I've already mentioned about Empires of the North expansions. It's more of the same. If you like it, grab them. Orleans, I don't enjoy Orleans enough to care about the expansions as much. I don't hate Orleans, I just find it a bit meh. I mean, it's very dry, dull, track leveler game. I'm not that fussed about it. But I do hear that trade is great. I hear that Intrigue is actually quite bad. I feel that this is a 50-50 expansion. I've still not played Canvas. I'd like to try Canvas, but I've still not played it. But maybe the expansion's great. I don't know. I want someone needs to teach me Canvas before I decide to jump in on that one. Anyway, an hour and 25 minutes. I think I'm going to wrap things up there. So, yeah, cheers for joining me on this one, guys. And if you watch this after the fact, thanks for watching it anyway. It'd be cool to see how many of these I can get out. Although, an hour and a half? My throat is getting dry at the moment. Maybe I need to condense this down closer to an hour. But, yeah, you know, these solo top 10s could be a cool thing. You know, if I need to get content out, I just throw up a solo top 10 of a list that people have wanted me to do. I mean, I've got the Patreons have been more than helpful in giving me top 10 suggestion ideas and voting on what, you know, if you're at a certain tier, you can vote on which top 10s I do. This one was kind of in the middle. Like, there's two more that they would rather I did over this one. But the next top 10 that I do officially, which will be a proper professional video in the other room, will be the top 10 worker placement games. Because I did that one a while ago, but worker placement games come out all the time. But the vast majority of people voted on that one. And there are a lot of great worker placement games, so it's time to refresh that list. But yeah, there's other top 10 ideas like coming and going. And of course, I want to get the collaborations going again. So once we get past next week, which is I'm going to Baycon, which is a Exeter convention. If you're in the UK, it's down in Exeter. It lasts 5 days. I'm there from next Wednesday through to Sunday. I might even be doing some live streaming with Paul Grogan on the Sunday. Maybe. We've kind of been discussing the fact. But, of course, don't take that as gospel. It really depends on his timetable. But, you know, fingers crossed, might be able to do something with him on the Sunday, which would be great. But he'll be there as well, so it'll be cool to hang out. But, yeah, I'm going to be at that convention from Wednesday to Friday. So I'll try to get some content out for that week, although you might just have to accept that Autobahn preview as the next video and then wait a few days. Perhaps I'll do a live stream when I get back from the convention, and you know, that way you like this, another top 10 list maybe. But you know, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for the kind comments. I already did cover, well, did you cover the This War of Mine expansions? Not the first one, but rewind the video back about 25 minutes and you'll get the thoughts on that one. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. I think we'll make this a thing, you know, some solo top 10 lists on here, some top 10 lists in the other room professional, and some collaborations. That way this channel can really go mad on top 10 lists. But yeah, we'll see. And no TTS for Canvas. Oh, that's a shame, otherwise I'd teach you. We need to get together and play some games, actually, although time zone might be a bit of a pain, but who knows, maybe sometime on the weekend's not too bad. But anyway, that's it for me. I'm going to head off and tidy up the place a bit. Maybe I've got Sinister Motives on here for Marvel Champions. I need to get that played through and review that one, so maybe I'll get on with that. But like I say, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple video. Remember, as always, it's only a game. And of course, don't forget to check out Kiender if you live in the UK and you want to get hold of some new games, my official sponsor. But yeah, take care, everybody. I'll see you soon. Love you all.